Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival live from the Trauma Center studios. The Packers cut Rodgers yesterday. The question is, was it the right Rodgers? We'll find out. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a great start to your Wednesday morning here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from coast to coast in the Trauma Center studios, powered by the Recovery Room. Yeah, that was an interesting move yesterday. The Green Bay Packers cut a guy named Rodgers. No, it wasn't the wrong
Rodgers, by the way. Initial A Rodgers.
Initial A Rodgers. Initial A new wide receiver was needed for this Green Bay Packer team. Listen, this guy wasn't a super spreader, Chad. We went through all that during COVID. He was a super dropper, and the Green Bay Packers did what they had to do yesterday. We'll talk about this move. Amari Rodgers. Kylin Hill also got cut yesterday by the Packers, but he was a seventh-round pick, Chad. We were going back and forth a bit off air. The fact that Green Bay moved up to get Rodgers is why some fans are bristling a bit. As a matter of fact, if you'd like to weigh in, give us your thoughts on the release of Amari Rodgers. Take this morning's poll question. Go to our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney. If you're a member of the Facebook group page, the Sports Carnival group page, you can take this morning's poll question there. And really quick, because Thomas is jumping in here from UWL, Joe Daguanno, Green and Gold Insider, will be on the program this morning at 8:30. But we are going to be joined by a very special guest coming up in just a few minutes. This man, Chad, is a great friend of the program, one of the best high school basketball coaches in the country, not just in the regions. Got a guy in the NBA right now, Matt Thomas, and has some really big things coming up this season. Onalaska Hilltoppers head coach Craig Cole is going to be joining the program. And if you want to chime in, guys and gals, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all the places that we can see your comments, we'd love to be able to take them. Twitter, for whatever reason, doesn't allow us to see comments there. So if you happen to chime in on Twitter, we won't actually get a chance to see you.
Well, but Elon Musk is too busy trying to disprove the fact that the birds aren't real. Or to prove that the birds aren't real, I should say.
Did that get fact-checked? Are you going to get a blue check mark? Are you going to go into the pocket for $20 and get that blue check mark?
No. Is that what it costs? $20 to get a blue check mark?
I'm not sure, but I don't think it's a lot. Basically, anybody can be a verified reporter now. Just give them money.
Thomas says it's snowing there?
Yeah, it's snowing here, Chad. I told you, maybe quarter inch yesterday. We might have gotten a quarter, maybe a half inch. But it's okay, because what it does tell us in earnest here in Wisconsin is that we're changing seasons. And we're going from, football season, high school football season just ended. Well, no, it's not just ended. I shouldn't say that. West Salem, Onalaska played a game last week here in town, Chad, that had super implications. West Salem beat Onalaska. The Panthers going on to state. But we can see the seasons changing, and now it's just about time to get ourselves indoors and start watching some great high school basketball. So let's do this. Let's take our first really quick break here on this morning's Sports Carnival. When we come back, we'll be joined live on the program by Hilltoppers head man Craig Cole. Stick around. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Hey, it's time for koozies, hot tubs, and jacuzzis. With a big announcement for the next 2 months. When you buy a hot tub or jacuzzi, you get a pair of tickets for the Big Koozes Booze Cruise. Headed to Cabo. So sop that mop and then come pop a top with me, the Coos.
Sop that mop is a slang term for wet bush.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the one and only Sports Carnival. Common sense is like deodorant. The people who need it the most, they never use it. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Oh, Chad, you see, this is what I used to tell people about all the time when they had no idea who you were, including our next guest, Craig Cole. I'm like, there's this dude, Chad, that you hear his voice all the time, and I've used it and overused it probably more than I should have. And I just said you were so funny. You had all these great jokes about odorous and things of that nature, especially here on a morning show, because that's just the way you like to get down. So we're glad to have you, and really glad to be joined this morning, Chad, by Craig Cole for the first time on the program, at least the new program. Craig Cole joining us. Top of the morning, Coach. How you doing, man? It feels like it's been a really long time since we've seen each other.
Excuse me, I'm a little cold starting here, but it's been a long time. Glad to be back on. We shared a few texts, a few phone calls, but getting in the live bullets here again feels pretty good.
I can only imagine. Chad, Craig, and I think the area is pretty familiar with him, but just to let you know, Craig's one of our more accomplished coaches and has had some great success here at Onalaska, has developed a number of really talented players to put him into the next level. Craig, we know about Matt Thomas because this guy's regionally very famous and his ascension to the NBA. Do you have information that you can share with us? Because I know that we were talking a couple of weeks ago about a player of yours that's going to be getting recognized for something and he'll have an opportunity to do something. Can we share that information now, or is that not yet public?
I don't know the final details as far as the final team yet, but I will just say that one of our players, TJ Stettley, tried out for the USA national team a few weeks ago. He was one of 18 kids at the tryout, and they keep 12. And I don't think they actually make the final decision until March, till after the high school season is over. But pretty amazing accomplishment for that young man, and obviously we're very excited for him, whether he makes it or not. He played against the Boozer twins and kids like that. And it's just an unbelievable experience. And to be, just to be invited is incredible.
So do you think, Craig, that John Shire is already calling the Boozer kids after losing last night and saying, listen, we need you here. Your dad was great. He was a horse. What positions do the Boozer kids play, by the way? Because their dad, Carlos, was a great power forward for Duke, really good in the NBA too.
Yeah, I'm sure they call him. I'm sure they've offered him several NIL deals already.
Sure.
They're probably set for life going into their sophomore year of high school here. But they're big kids, but they're very skilled, and I guess the one is really special. So it'll be interesting to follow their development. And obviously his dad had a wonderful career, and looks like his kids are too.
Carl Boozer had twins. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How lucky can you be as a Boozer family, right? You've
right?
got Carlos, who's like Craig said, setting them up for a generation. Then you've got these kids coming up. It's really interesting just to kind of take a quick divergence here on how many sons and daughters now of former NBA players, Craig, or even just athletes in general, are making these incredible leaps and almost, inexplicably outshooting their parents in many cases, right? You're starting to see, guys in the NFL, the NBA, that their parents played Steph Curry, Del Curry. Del was a great NBA basketball player, like not good, great. And Steph Curry, of course, makes Del Curry's career look like it was an also-ran. It's just interesting to me to see the continual evolution of the game of basketball and in sports in general, but basketball really and truly. And, that's what I want to ask you about next. Your season doesn't tip off for still a couple of weeks. I'm looking on your website. It looks like you've got a scrimmage scheduled for the 26th. You guys did begin practice, though, this week. Is that correct?
We did. We started Monday. Yep. That is accurate.
Okay. So with the season ahead, what are some of the big goalposts for this year's Onalaska team? Because, again, you've got always new guys. There's, always going to be some that were remaining from last year. But what are the goalposts for this year's Onalaska team?
I tell you what, last year we thought was going to be kind of a rebuild for us after the state runner-up team 2 years ago. And, the kids really came together. I think we finished 19-6, and we have 4 starters back from that team. And then we also I had a young man move in from Black River Falls by the name of Everett Anderson, who's an outstanding player, who's a junior, and he averaged 26 points per game for Black River, and he just fit in beautifully, just from a character standpoint, from an effort standpoint, a leadership standpoint, So essentially, we got 5 really good starters back. We're actually going to bring some very talented seniors off the bench, which usually your seniors are kind of starting, but we got some really good kids off the bench. Unique situation for me this year. I've got a freshman son that's in the varsity. So
wow,
I coached my own kid for the first time.
Congratulations.
So I'm hopefully his mother and his grandpa go easy on me this year. He's not playing much, but no. So we're looking. I mean, we really feel like the sky's the limit from a potential standpoint. We're shooting for the stars. We really hope that we can take care of business and hopefully make a deep run and, be where we were a couple of years ago.
The great thing about coaching your own son, I don't know if you remember Pistol Pete Maravich, but I think he averaged like 44 points when he was in college. So you can really set your kid up to do really well if you do it right.
Well, if I did that, like I said, mom and grandpa would be happy, but I'm not sure that other parents on the team, other players on the team would be happy. And that's probably not his style as a player, thank goodness. He's more of a facilitator.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
it's interesting, Chad. The MVC, the conference that Craig Cole's Onalaska Hilltoppers play in out here in Western Wisconsin, one of the tougher conferences in the state. As a matter of fact, we've seen a lot of really, really good teams in the last 10, 12 years come from this area. Let me ask you about that, Coach, with the MVC in specific. What are the other teams in your estimation looking like this year? Because I've been out of the high school game for a bit now, maybe 6 months. So I wasn't able to really keep tabs on Central and Aquinas, and, talked to Brad a little bit a couple of weeks ago. I know they're looking forward to a good season, but give us an overall of the MVC, at least from where you're sitting right now.
Yeah, Central and us have been, the top two teams in the league. We fought it out for the last decade, basically. And, between our two programs, I can't even count how many college players that we've had. And obviously they had a lottery pick in Johnny Davis, and Jordan Davis is off to a great start at Wisconsin. And he led them in scoring last night against
It was
Green
a good
Bay.
game. It's a good game.
Yeah. Grinder, Wisconsin style. But no, I mean, it's been the number of college talent that we send out has been unbelievable. So looking forward to this season. Central will be very good again. Maybe not the depth they've had in previous years. But they still for sure have 2, maybe 3 college players on their roster right now. A couple of very talented kids. So I would say they're going to be tough to beat. Holman's got a nice group of players. They did have an injury to their point guard, the Jace Leeser kid, unfortunately, which hurts them a little bit. And Aquinas, they've been used to winning in football here, and they got some nice athletes. So I think they'll be very solid. And the rest of the conference will be competitive. Maybe not to the level that the rest of us are at, but they'll definitely bring it each and every night.
Yeah, it's one of those things here, Chad, especially in Western Wisconsin. The teams, even if they're not necessarily matched up, in skill, the competitiveness of these young men, the coaches are all fantastic, and the parents really buy in to the sports out here, which makes the atmosphere so electric. I know you've got to go to class this morning, Coach, so we'll go ahead and let you get back to it. But I just wanted to get you on before the season started, and we'd love to have you back on more and more as the season progresses, because, Chad, this was one of our favorite parts of the high school and even NBA basketball season. Craig's a real good NBA guy, too, when it comes to throwing out questions. That's an encyclopedia of old NBA shit. So we want to get you back on the show as the season progresses, but starting off with a very big amount of good luck to you here, because I know this is going to be, one of those years where you've got a lot of different plans and a lot of different goals, and we'll wish you good luck. And like I said, get you back on the show. Your first scrimmage, 26th of November. Is that open to the public, or is that a closed thing?
Yeah, that's Stewartville, Minnesota. And so with some really high-level Minnesota teams we're going against there. So
excellent. All right, good stuff, dude. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on with us this morning. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Coach.
Love the show, man. Keep up the great work.
We'll try.
I appreciate you. Yeah, Onalaska Hilltoppers coach Craig Cole, Chad, just a really great guy, great basketball coach too. And it seems counterintuitive in some ways, right? I moved from Las Vegas to Western Wisconsin. A friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Marty from Las Vegas, asked me if I was crazy. He literally asked me if I was crazy. He was like, "What are you trying to do? You're going to ruin your career? You're going to an unrated market?" And I said, "Nah, there's just something about this place that feels special." When I came out here on my market visit, I was just overcome by the beauty of the city and the way that it was set up. Like, it didn't feel like a city of 50,000 people, because every year there's 25, 30,000 new people here besides the residents going to college, right? We've got 3 universities. But then I started figuring out that the high school talent in this area was some of the best high school talent in the country. When you think about some of the stars in the NBA right now, Tyler Hero is a Wisconsin kid, okay? Played against Bailey Cale, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. Matt Thomas has been in the NBA for a number of years. Tyrese Halliburton playing a great starting role for the Indiana Pacers, right? Went to, I think it was Iowa State. He's another guy from the state of Wisconsin. I mean, there are so many. Jalen Johnson, who played a season with Duke and got drafted high in the NBA, almost went to Wisconsin. The Hauser boys, right? One of the Hausers is playing a great role for your Boston Celtics right now, coming from Wisconsin. So yeah, it's just really become this.
He's the white guy.
He is, and a tall one at that, too. Boy, they could shoot the lights out, too. Both of those kids, Sam and Joey. What I'm saying is that this area for basketball and the competition is just, it's almost hard to believe that you can have like places this size with this much population or this little population that just have this many great talents. So congratulations to Craig, and I'm excited for the season.
Can you interpret this from Jeremy Foreman? It didn't help that you met the godfather of the area when you first came. Who's the godfather? I don't know who that
Jeremy Foreman is. It
Oh,
says
he's calling himself the godfather.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He says it did help that I met the godfather. Yes, it did help. This was interesting because I didn't know P12 Foreman on my trip out here, but I went to this bar that's now called Fork and Fable. At the time, it was called the Arterial. And I sat around because I'd heard about this place in Vegas on the radio. I was listening to the show, scoping it, if you will, to go inside radio. And I heard this promotion for the Arterial Bar and Grill. So I figured I've got to check it out. Little did I know P12 Foreman was sitting on the other side of the bar like that dude in Bad Santa. I fucking me. And I'm like, who is this guy? And it turns out he was the godfather of the area. So great to make your acquaintance.
It's Fable. I love the name of that place. That's a cool name. The Fork and Fable. We used to have a place here in town. It was called the Royal Fork. And it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. And I just remember as a kid, I was mesmerized by the guy that was cutting the roast beef because that's where I would hang out. Because you know what I mean? Here's the thing about a buffet, being from, that we lived in Vegas. You stay away from all the salads and the breads and all the fillers. You go for the steak and the lobster and whatever costs the most. That's just common sense, right?
The carved turkey, right? Like, so the turkey carving station, the roast beef station. Listen, if you're going to pay $28 for or whatever, and on the low end now in Las Vegas, right? You're talking $28, $38, $48. Why would you be getting tiramisu? I mean, or like pudding, right? You need to go get that stuff that would cost you a fortune. Now, I will say this. Trough eating for me is generally off limits. Like I don't just, get into a big trough and start, digging in with the regular folk. But if it's going to be something cut right in front of me, I'm okay with that.
So I thought during a pandemic, the best thing to do is go trough eating. No? Isn't it amazing how buffets just kind of took a big old shit after the pandemic? Nobody wanted to just, communal food where you're telling me breathing over top of food.
Yeah, that sneeze guard wasn't keeping everything away.
Yeah, because it can't get underneath that. It only can go over top of it.
We got a Facebook user chiming in here, Chad. We talked about the seasons changing, right? Snow is on the ground out here. I said basketball season. Facebook user says snow means hockey season, brother. And that is what's up, too. I want to say that could potentially be Jordan Lonsborough. We have like 6 or 7 dedicated hockey fans that listen to the program, right? And what's interesting about that, too, because the Minnesota Wild left or not the Minnesota Wild, the Dallas Stars left from Minnesota back in the day. They call them the Trader Stars. The Wild have a following out here, but it's not as big as you would think. Do you know who a lot of people out here are fans of?
The Bruins, like me?
The Vegas Golden Knights.
Oh, the Golden
Knights, which, by the way, the Golden Knights were just on, I think, a 9-game heater a couple of days ago. I don't know that they continued that streak, but they were playing some fantastic hockey. The Vegas Golden Knights missed the postseason for the first time in their very brief history last year, and I think they're going to be gunning for another run to the Stanley Cup this season. I really do.
They really get in my crease, so I'm not a big fan.
Hey, don't tell me to stay between the blue lines, baby. I'm all over the place.
I have to be honest with you. I've tried to like hockey on TV. I just can't do it. I like it much more in person, and I don't quite understand everything. There's too many lines. I don't understand all the rules. But they took the fighting out of it for the most part, so that disappoints me. But live, there's nothing better. I mean, honestly, it's kind of like baseball. You got to be there. It doesn't translate as well on TV. It's
baseball, especially because you can't see the whole field. You can only see a couple of little parts of baseball. Hockey is the puck is really still difficult to track on a television screen. It is
very difficult. Yeah.
It took me some time. I'll be honest. It took me some time to grasp the totality of the game of hockey, but being an off-ice official and a PA guy for years, I got it, right? Like the nuance you get, you understand all the rules, the calls. I love hockey. It is a sport that you need to see in person to really appreciate why the fans are so fervent about it. Because when you go to a game, you have no mistake why that's such a fun atmosphere and why that's such a fun sport to watch. But yeah, when you see it on TV, it just doesn't hold the same. It just
other thing about hockey and hockey fans and hockey players is they're heavy drinkers. They like to party.
Yes.
As being with the Wranglers as long as you were, I knew you finished many of your nights at a bar, and it's hard to keep up with hockey players. Those dudes know how to pound it. Yeah.
It's impossible. Here's the other thing that I thought was just, I wouldn't say it wasn't completely improbable, but it felt like it wouldn't have held up as well as it did because we were in Las Vegas. The players for the ECHL, Chad, in many respects were making $500 a week, right? Like very, you're on a minor league contract if you're getting an actual contract from an upline. If not, you're making a very minimum type salary. These guys were able to pull $500,000 a week chicks. That to me was one of the surprises in Vegas, because you're up against actual celebrities, right? Like, we had a radio show, we get Joe Coy on, and we get these guys, that come in, Jeff Ross, and those are actual celebrities that are working in Las Vegas, right? So the radio guy is like the 99th ran. And when you're a hockey player that's making $500 a week, you would figure that most of the talent that they were trying to acquire would tell them to kick rocks because they just didn't make enough money. Not the case. I mean, not the case. Shout out to McMullen's Pub across the street from the Orleans.
Yes.
God, what a fun place that was.
I had a few long nights there, and I said, like, I try to keep up with I think I went over there with you once or twice with the hockey dudes, and I used to be able to pound it. And I know that you're in a different neck of the woods now, and this is pretty average. But boy, I tell you what, those guys can just keep drinking and partying, and you're just like, I got to go home at some point. I mean, when you go in the daytime and you leave in the daylight, you've been there too long. You know what I'm saying?
The good thing about that place, relational to where you lived for many years in Las Vegas, that you could actually, if you had to, walk home. You could have if you had to.
I did. Walk isn't the right word, but yes, I made it home. Stumble.
I was going to say, it looked like, is that Burgess Meredith playing the Penguin right there? No, it's Chad walking home after a long night at McMullen's. I want to thank our sponsors here, Chad, this morning. We've got a lot left to come. Joe Daguanno, our Green and Gold Insider, pops up at 9:30. But Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate. Chad was over at my house yesterday, and he spent some time with me, gave me a home valuation. If you're looking to buy or sell a home, you need to talk to somebody who is a full-time dedicated real estate agent. I know there's a lot of people that do real estate, but seriously, if you want to max out your investment, you need to talk to somebody who is in this 24/7. The other thing is this, Chad, maybe you just want to find out how much your house is actually worth. Moving in the wintertime, as you know, Washington and Wisconsin are not that dissimilar, okay? In Vegas, it didn't really matter if you moved in December. Nobody cared. It wasn't, it was probably a better time to move because it wasn't so freaking hot. But out here, it becomes a little different. But if you want to know what your house is worth, get a valuation from Kyle Cable. Let him come over, walk your property, take a look at it, give you the comps and comparables, and give you a game plan. Preferred Insurance, Tony Rousso and Brian Sandmeyer. When you've got that home, that business, the auto, or you need flood insurance, and that's a big one out here, Chad. A lot of properties in the floodplain. You need to go to Preferred Insurance, the official insurance provider of the program. And for your mortgage needs, it is the Midwest Mortgage Team of Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi, the Coos.
The Coos.
Now, once you get in trouble, Sean O'Neill Law Firm, and you get your grass cut by Joe at Helping Hands Landscaping.
I like Foreman's take on this. The gold diggers were willing to take a few shitty years with the hopes the player makes it big and then she can cash in before she leaves him. Yeah, that's probably there's some truth to that, yes. Unfortunately. And then there's just a lot of gals that just want to have a good time.
They were good looking dudes. That's the other thing. They were good looking guys.
They know how to put the puck in the net, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes, indeed. Hey, listen, anybody can. What do they say? Anybody can do some plowing, but a wise man knows how, right? So there's that, and I think that's probably what those ladies were thinking of with the hockey fan. I don't want to get too deep into that because I don't know. I mean, they maybe just wanted their robust conversation with a slight tinge of Canadian accent, eh?
Take off, you hoser.
That's a possibility.
It's a possibility. Right. Yeah.
So Chad, because we've got Joe coming up at 8:30, we're going to save over the Amari Rodgers slide because Amari Rodgers got cut yesterday by the Green Bay Packers. So did Kylin Hill, who's a 7th round pick, didn't really make much of a difference in my estimation to the team. But I'm curious to take the temperature of the audience this morning. The Twitter poll question, which is on our feed at the Sports Carney, as well as the Facebook group page, is asking, were you surprised by this move? And just two ways that you can answer, Chad. Yes, he's still so young, or no, he sucked. 70-30, no, he sucked.
I would like to rephrase the question. And what my open was, did they cut the right Rodgers? I know I probably know the answer to that, but I thought it was kind of funny. Because it is interesting. Actually, I would imagine Aaron Rodgers is thrilled because not only does he get rid of a guy that, turns the ball over a lot, but he gets rid of a guy with his same last name and his same first initial. It's like, in case there was any confusion, I'm the only Rodgers on this team. It's this Mr. Rogers neighborhood, buddy. So just move on out.
I don't think that you're off base on that one at all, as a matter of fact, because there was a player on the team that the guys really enjoyed. It was Amari Rodgers. And then there's Aaron Rodgers. And when you have to live in that kind of dichotomy, it really rankles you. Aaron Rodgers, interestingly enough, was talking about the play call that he blew up Matt LaFleur on Sunday for, and said this on the Pat McAfee show yesterday. And I'm paraphrasing to go back to the program, but he upset at the play call, right? Matt McAfee asked him, what happened there? Why'd you yell at your coach? And he's like, well, I was upset at the play call. And so was Matt. Okay, let me just walk this back really quick.
What does that mean?
If Matt was upset at the play call, who the fuck is calling the plays? Like who's doing that, right? Like if the coach is like, wow, this came out of nowhere. Oh, okay. That seems to be a larger issue than Amari Rodgers even dropping the football on a kickoff return or a punt return. What did that mean? I don't know. And was this just hyperbole by Rodgers so that he could say, "Oh,
he's
yeah,
covering."
Okay,
yeah,
it has to be, right?" Because if this is where, though, I don't know, people pick up this thread. This is where subtle shots come from somebody that's smart, right? When you start telling reporters or Pat McAfee in the media that, a few weeks back, you had some guys that needed to get, fewer snaps. There needed to be players with fewer snaps. Well, you're telling your coaching staff they don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's what you're saying to them. And then if you're saying, well, Matt was upset at the play call too, did he know what was going to be called? Because if he didn't, that seems like an also larger problem than is being reported. But for those that are sitting back and that just passes right over their head, I'm going to tell you, that's a fucking shot. And he's saying something about the coach like, maybe this guy doesn't know what he is doing as much as he says he does. And that's been kind of Rodgers' MO for a while. He's kind of used these sideways glances, if you will, the passing glances to sort of lay out his point. But when I heard that yesterday, I thought, oh, okay, that's a little dig at Matt LaFleur.
He's passive aggressive, and he's a bit of a egomaniac, and he's a know-it-all. That's the bottom line. That's the kind of guy Aaron Rodgers seems to be. Obviously, you and I don't know him. I've never met the guy. I've never interviewed the guy. But just from what I glean, from what I see, that's kind of what I pick up. And what's interesting when those exchanges happen is when they get him on film. I think that happens a lot more than with other players and coaches throughout the league. We just don't necessarily see it as much. And obviously, because of this tenuous relationship that's already been developed here, or at least exposed, I think that they hyper focus on that. So it's probably not that big of a deal, but it's still interesting.
Well, it is interesting. And the hyper focus on the Green Bay Packers is something that I thought I would bring up today too, because the numbers that came out from Sunday's game versus the Dallas Cowboys were staggering. The Dallas Cowboys and Green Bay Packer game on Sunday drew 28.9 million viewers. That's as many viewers as many of the conference championship games, Chad, get before the Super Bowl. This is one of the reasons why, for Packer fans that get really tired of hearing these narratives repeated and rehashed over and over, this is one of the reasons why, because there is great, not good, great national interest surrounding the Packers. The Cowboys obviously had a lot to do too, but we're talking about two historical, nationally renowned teams, and Green Bay's right there.
That might be better numbers than the World Series. I know this year's World Series was down more than it's been the last 10 or 15 years. That's interesting. 28.9 million. Is that what you said?
For Sunday football at 3:25 in the afternoon.
Wow.
Not Sunday night football, not Monday football, Sunday afternoon football, 3:25, 28.9 million people. Now, one of those 28.9 million people, Green and Gold insider, Joe Daguanno, is going to be with us here after the break. Joe will talk to us about the dropping of Amari Rodgers, who is a super dropper. We'll also get Joe's thoughts here, Chadwick, on what the Packers are going to be doing on Thursday, tomorrow, against the Tennessee Titans. We saw the Cowboys run and run and run all over Green Bay. Little hint for the Packers. There's this dude named Derrick Henry. He's good, and he plays for the Titans. Stay tuned.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices. The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Remember, everything is edible. Some things are only edible once. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
All right, I'm not going to get into my oral fixation this morning here because what I think is edible and what you think is edible might be two completely different things. I will use my mouth, my talking mouth here, to bring aboard our green and gold insider, Chad, the mad dog of Madison, somebody who has really shepherded Green Bay Packer fans through times both good and bad. Joe Daguanno. Top of the morning, Joe D. It's good to see you stationary. What part of the state or country are you in today?
I'm in the Illinois area today.
Very nice.
So, I'm heading down to Missouri later on this week. And so then back to Illinois and then back to Wisconsin. So it's a little bit kind of around the Midwest today. But I just got to start by saying this, the Packer locker room right now, as I tweeted out this morning, I'm not quite dead yet. I'm actually feeling healthy. I mean, basically, Rodgers went Monty Python on us this week with the Holy Grail, and so, bring out your dead, man, and I tell you, relax, RELAX. That was good. We're gonna run the table. That was good. That inspires people. We're not dead yet. Yeah, that's inspiring. I want to run through a wall on that mantra this year.
It's like Newt Rockney right there.
That is Newt Rockney. It's like let's go. Yeah, that's just
not dead yet here, boys. Yeah, listen, Joe. That though is about the best case scenario for this Green Bay Packer team, that they're not actually dead yet. However, we started looking at this playoff picture after that Washington Commanders victory over the Eagles on Sunday. And I said this yesterday, Chad and I were talking about it. If you're a Packers fan, the fact that Washington beat Philly was the worst possible scenario that could have occurred, because in the NFC East now, you've got Philly at 8-1. You've got the Giants, the New York Football Giants at 7-2, Dallas at 6-3. Those are three potential playoff teams right there. You've got a couple in the wild card. You got a division winner. Washington's tied with Tampa Bay at 5-5. Tampa Bay will win that division. They're getting in. Then you look at the rest of the NFC, and Joe, the picture becomes really, really muddled. Now, the fact is Green Bay is not mathematically eliminated, which should give us some hope. But I'm curious, your overall takeaway, the win against the Cowboys, and we didn't have you on Monday, so we couldn't get that knee-jerk reaction. But that win against the Cowboys was great. They obviously needed it. But do you think that victory propels this team to greater heights than perhaps you had anticipated before that game on Sunday?
No, look, here's the thing. In my opinion, they're still not a playoff team. And we'll see tomorrow night. I mean, we'll see. I think that's going to be the litmus test. They've got to string together a couple of these games for me to start saying, yes, this is a playoff team. Now, can they salvage the season and still not be a playoff team? Yes, 100%. And so if this team goes, 9-8 and you feel good about the back half of the year, yeah, this was heading in the toilet. After Detroit last week, this thing was heading in the toilet and heads could have been rolling after this season. I think that Dallas game could have salvaged the season to a point. I still don't buy it. If you're saying buying and selling the Green Bay Packers as a playoff team, I'm selling. But at this point, that Dallas game at least gave Packer fandom and Packer Kingdom a little bit of hope. Are they a playoff team? I still think no.
What's funny is we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. What they needed to do was run the football and play defense, and that's what won them the game against the Cowboys. Are you seeing the same kind of strategy coming up tomorrow night against the Titans?
Here's an interesting stat, boys. I believe it was 61% scheduled run calls for the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. That's the highest of Aaron Rodgers' career. And so I think finally LaFleur realized that to make the play action game work, and again, we see what Christian Watson can do, but it was because of the running game that allowed Christian Watson to have man-on-man coverage and one-on-one coverage with one safety high. So, yeah, that's their identity. Their best player on offense is Aaron Jones. The fact that it took them so long to get here this year from an identity standpoint, and we can blame Rodgers, we can blame Stenovich, we can blame LaFleur. I think you point fingers in all directions. But when you finally realize as a football team what your identity is, and you stick with that identity, you should have success. Most football failures are because teams don't know who they are and to be self-aware. And when you look at what happened Sunday, that is the recipe for success. Get some stops on third downs, get some turnovers, run the ball, and then take your shots downfield when you can. That is this Green Bay Packer football team, like it or not. And do they do it tomorrow night? Absolutely. Derrick Henry, he's a beast. And we saw what happened with the Packers' run defense. And so this is going to be a slob knocker of a game. It's not going to be pretty at Lambeau as far as weather-wise. You've got a team that needs to run versus a team that needs to run. I never thought I'd say this, but Aaron Rodgers is on the same level as far as game management with Ryan Tannehill right now. And so, yeah, you see the recipe for success. Whether or not they stick with it, we'll see.
So we got a Facebook user popping in saying they finally, Joe, had their O-line back and playing well, and that's true. I've got a couple of takes here, and I'm going to start with the Packers, and then we'll go to the Cowboys. I want to see how this lands with you. The Green Bay Packers have always, under Matt LaFleur, wanted to do exactly what they did on Sunday. That was always the idea. That was always Matt LaFleur's way of running a football team. You could see this when he took over the one-year play calling in Tennessee. That was the way that he was attempting to set this up. How that diverged so far, I think, has a lot to do with Rodgers and the fact that he was a two-time reigning MVP and said, look, you've got to let me air out this football. But he was, Rodgers, so fucking bad against Detroit. And you have to lay that out there. He was so bad. As a collective of coaches, you go back into that room and it's like, listen, bro, we understand what we have to do to get here, but we've got to change this. We have to, because if we don't, you aren't getting any more plays downfield. You're not going to be able to get those plays. So I thought it was a reflection on how bad Rodgers was playing. Because when you look at the limited number of pass attempts, and Joe, you mentioned the 62% designed runs, the most in the starting career of Aaron Rodgers. You see why that is. But Chad and I also brought up a stat on Monday that I thought was important to mention as well, because it goes to the essence of what LaFleur's offense should be. 28-1 is the Green Bay Packers record under Matt LaFleur when they run the ball 40% of the time or more. This ain't rocket science. This is simple football shit. And that's just something, Joe, you and I have talked about for 5.5 years. When Rodgers was going to allow a running game, his offense and his production were going to be much greater. Now, to the Cowboys side, I think what we saw was a lot of the exposition of the Cowboys in a sense. The Cowboys with Dak Prescott are not much different than they were with Cooper Rush. They just aren't. Dak is a very average quarterback. We've talked about that. At least that's the way that I feel. I don't think he is an elite guy. Good skill position players, a historically good offensive line, and a running back that can rush for 2,000 yards. That made Dak Prescott look good. But we saw the chinks in the armor there. We saw the fact that Dallas doesn't stop the run real well, and Green Bay took advantage of it. You put pressure on Dak Prescott, and then you give it to Mike McCarthy to fumble a play call, and you've got the recipe for success. See, Dallas looks like a paper tiger. The win was great for Green Bay. It really was. They needed it. Season would have been completely over, and who knows what would have happened afterwards. But I thought Dallas got exposed, and I thought the Packers went to the run game because Rodgers was just categorically bad, Joe. He had a bad game against the Lions.
Yeah, no question. And look, you mentioned McCarthy and McCarthy and LaFleur. And I've said this before, when you have superior talent like an Aaron Rodgers and with LaFleur like you had with Devontae Adams, you get lazy as a play caller. And McCarthy at the end of his tenure with Rodgers got lazy as a play caller. He said, my players are going to bail me out. Again, when LaFleur says in the offseason, 80% of the offense ran through Devontae Adams, that's a problem. So you get lazy as a play caller. And again, we all know Rodgers can be Rodgers. We know that. We also know Brady can be Brady, et cetera, et cetera. We know these guys have an ego. It's basically it's my way, et cetera, et cetera. Rodgers and LaFleur, if this thing is going to work, and I'll say it again, I still say Rodgers is going to be the Green Bay Packer quarterback at least for next year. So, there is not going to be this retirement or trade in the offseason. There's not. So I stand on my ground on this. So this thing, that's why I said needs to get fixed now, because if you're going to have any hope of next year, and again, we're going to know a lot more like we talked about in the spring with that 5th-year option for Jordan Love. But you got to build this thing for next year now, like I said before. So, yeah, it's a pain in the ass to see. And Chad, you talked about it. Every fucking successful NFL quarterback is prickly. I mean, that just is what it is. And you look at Brady and his tantrums, and you look at what other quarterbacks do around the league. Now, Rodgers takes it to the next level, and you said it before I got on. He's super passive aggressive, and he's also super smart. So he knows what to say to get his digs in and still not necessarily look like a complete asshole, but he still does. But yeah, look, you have to take that recipe, and you're right, Dave. Dallas, we're talking George Plimpton here, and this is the epitome of a paper lion, paper cowboy, whatever you want to call it, and so they are a pretend team, but it's a good win. A win is a win is a win, and I've said this before. In life and in football, you have X amount of wins in life. Don't apologize for any fucking one of them. But it was interesting seeing McCarthy on that other sidelines, because Mike McCarthy, Super Bowl winning coach of the Green Bay Packers. Can't take that away from him. Mike McCarthy, though, we all know his warts. We all know his problems. It was like watching 2 fucking Green Bay Packer games, one from today with Matt LaFleur and one from 2016 with Mike McCarthy.
It really was, Chad. I was watching this, game on Sunday, obviously, like everybody here in the state of Wisconsin was, and I'm watching Mike McCarthy not kick a field goal, and I understand why he didn't, because he's afraid of Aaron Rodgers. But this then made me go back to what I just mentioned about Dallas and why this is a fake fucking team. If your strength is supposed to be the second coming of Lawrence Taylor and Micah Parsons on this defense, then you put the game in your defense's hands, right? Think about the old Baltimore Ravens. If they would have had that field goal, they would kick the field goal, because of course you're like, well, you're not going to stop us or not going to score because we've got this defense. That to me shows why the Dallas Cowboys this year, let's see how this season unravels for them. Because like I've mentioned, you've got Philly, you've got New York, and then you've got Washington coming up the rear. Washington's not going to be quitting on this season, right? They're 5-5. They're not going to quit. If Dallas doesn't make it to the postseason for whatever reason, or they go one and done, I can really see a move to put Dan Quinn as head coach, because that is going to look like the most obvious next move for a guy like Jerry Jones. When you start to see just, again, the play call, forget the fact they went for it on 4th down, guys. The call itself on 4th down, the Packers couldn't stop a nosebleed against Dallas. Every gash was for 5 to 10 yards. I think they were getting on average 5.6 yards per carry out of their running backs. You run the football.
I think that was a play call of emotion as opposed to logic. And you could clearly see it when McCarthy threw his headset. He was too emotionally involved in this football game to make the right call, because I think that if that would have been any other team, he would have kicked the field goal.
Yeah, no question. And guys, I want to jump over to something, because you talked about it with the Amari Rodgers getting cut, and I want to dive into that, because I want to, we look at this team today, and I just want to say that Brian Gutekunst's 3rd round picks, first and foremost, Oren Burks, Jay Sternberger, Josiah DeGuara, Amari Rodgers, and Sean Ryan. So that's his 3rd. At this point in time, he might as well just fucking hey, I'm taking the 3rd round off. and so I think, Goody's gotten a little bit of a hall pass. And when you start breaking down where this team is today, and don't get me wrong, I know he had to fix a bad situation when he took over. That was a talentless club that towards the end of Ted Thompson's tenure, because we all know Ted Thompson was sick, probably not on his game, probably should have done something a lot earlier than what they did. So I give him credit for reinvigorating the talent that was there. But I think at some point, you need to start pointing your fingers at that front office. When you have almost zero contributions from your 2021 draft class, when you break it down
At the Little Doobie's Pizza.
And
Sorry, my bad.
I'm like, commercial break now.
No, my bad.
It's all good, man. It's all good. So here's the thing: when you have zero contribution from that class, and Eric Stokes regressing and now gone for the year, that's where this shit show has gone as far as 2022 now. So we talk about LaFleur, we talk about Rodgers. That finger needs to start pointing at the front office. When you have no contributions from your third-round draft picks in your history, in your tenure since 2018 as a GM, that's a shitty record. And so I think he's a lacrosse boy. I get this, but it's time to start looking. And your boy, Milt Fredrickson, would be my answer for the replacement if they do move on. But I think Goody right now needs to be held much more accountable than what he is.
Well, and I don't know that Joey's not being held accountable by folks that are Packer fans, but because we've had such a terrible season on field, we've overlooked some of what you just mentioned. But you're right, organizationally and structurally, Green Bay has a modus operandi, draft and develop. If you don't do one of those things right, the development and the drafting's awful too, well, then you're really up the creek. Hey, dude, we got to let you off. But as always, great stuff. Super glad that you were able to join us this morning. Thanks for making time for us here in your weekend. Joe, we'll be following you on Twitter again. Climb this morning's poll question at the Sports Carney and let us know your thoughts on the Packers cutting Amari Rodgers. Until next time, brother. Thank you much.
Hey, Packers lose tomorrow night, boys.
Oh, good God, you left us with that bomb. Boosh.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home, or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
At the Little Doobie's Pizza, we kill 2 stone birds with 1 rock every time with our hand-rolled Doobie Deluxe for only $49.95. That's a street value of over $75. No way! The Doobie Deluxe is a hand-rolled 18-inch pizza that will blow your bone-resined mind. Whoa! Topped with a sausage, black olives, extra cheese, and about a half ounce of the finest kush at east side of San Bernardino.
Dude, give me another slice.
Because at Little Doobie's Pizza, we put a little TLC in our THC.
And right now, for a limited time only, get an order of crazy cannabis bread for only $10 with an order of a Doobie Deluxe at the street value of over $22.50.
You know what we say at the Little Doobie's Pizza? Why get stoned then eat when you can do both at the same time?
Doobies.
Yeah, back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. You know, Mike Ditka once said, what's the difference between a 3-week-old puppy and a sports writer? In 6 weeks, the puppy stops whining.
Oh,
now here's your host, Dave Carney.
God, Mike Ditka. Geez, you're not sparing us anything, are you?
No.
Sports writers. Is that even still a thing? Isn't it sports bloggers now or sports tweeters?
I have a feeling when Mike Ditka said that, it was the 80s, and that's what
true.
So,
for whatever reason, I was thinking about old-time football guys and their names the other day, and one that I know was picked on at least for a couple of years when he was young was Dick Butkus, and I remember thinking that it was a different day and age, right? The name Dick Richard was very common. It was kind of like Butch, right? Jim Fossil's dad's name was Butch. Like, that's a name that you just don't hear a lot anymore, right? Same thing with like Dick. It's just not one of those names.
that you hear a lot. And it's funny because when we used to do radio, and Chad, you kind of schooled me in on some of the nuance when we were at CBS doing the over-under show. You can say you're a dick, but you can't talk about your dick. Like, I mean, you could call me a dick, but you couldn't talk about your dick. It was weird. Like, there was that little thing back and forth. And so, but that was a radioism. Chad's like, no, I can call you a dick, but you can't talk about your dick. And I just thought that was always interesting. And now, after, many years have gone by and I'm starting to see these names, the old-timey names never come back into fashion. I wonder if there isn't any sort of like FCC regulation that has come down the pipe so far, so long that people just stop naming their kids, Dick Buttkiss, Butch, and the things. Because, see, Butch took on a whole different connotation after the 1970s.
Well, I'll just say this. You go first in making fun of Dick Butkus to his face. Right?
Yeah, not going to happen.
Even now at 60, whatever, I think if he got a hold of you, he would probably crush you.
Do you know the old man strength that he would have in his hands? Those paws would be able to windpipe, goodbye. I'm just saying at 8 or 9 years old, I'm going to imagine that there was some smart aleck on the playground. These guys are wearing knickers back in those days and probably some sort of Oshkosh Bagosh shirt. And, I'm sure Dick Butkus probably had a challenge or two from time to time.
I would imagine he probably won most of those challenges, but yeah, he probably did. Someone tried to tease him, and then they decided that was probably not necessarily a fruitful endeavor, and they moved on. But as far as the nuances of the FCC, yeah, interesting. You can say that the submarine, the Navy submarine, is full of semen, but you cannot say that in other contexts. So yeah, there is. It's interesting how they divide all this stuff up. Context has a lot to do with it. Yes,
it really does. Again, when we're thinking about how the FCC regulated things and what they're not able to do now with the internet, this is one of the salient reasons that somebody like myself decided after a number of years, it's time to just go. Because and I had a conversation. I know this feels like it's off topic, but it's not. I had a conversation with somebody the other day about the fact that this country was formed by the biggest drags of Western Europe in the 1400s. Think about this. The Quakers and the Puritans were they were just too big of a drag to be in Europe. They're like, God, we can't even get to the age of enlightenment with these fuckers over here. They come to the States, they start burning people for reading books. It's called the Scarlet Letter. This is trickled down to our government apparatuses where it's like, the no and the naughty police that like to look at your language and all the different things. It comes from the fact that we are a nation of fucking drags, man. People that were just really kind of uptight ninnies. It just was what it was.
There is a Dick Burns and Sharon Peters that lives in the area. Dick Burns and Sharon Peters. I wonder if they know each other.
They might. If they've ever met Foreman, they do. That's for sure.
That's amazing.
Let's see. Jeremy, P12 back and saying you can't say knickers in public anymore.
You be very careful. Very, very careful how you tread. You tread lightly on the, that's another one. There's all kinds of things that you can and can't say, and it's all arbitrary.
It really is.
I think Family Guy did a really good bit about that. It was the FCC, basically.
Oh, God,
I don't remember that way back when, and did this whole song. It was great. And it is very arbitrary. Who knows?
Seth MacFarlane doing a song. Get out of here.
I know. That's hard to believe. He likes musicals. It's weird.
He does. Funny guy, though. Funny guy. Rob Dog was checking in earlier today. Chad says, then this is back to our conversation about Aaron Rodgers. Says, also, should I do a tribute speech to my team's owner, Aaron Rodgers, for humor as a Bears fan? What do you think that means?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm just asking.
No idea.
That sentence. What do you think that means?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay. All right. Listen, inquiring minds wanted to know, and I figured, I figured it was something that I would throw to you. You're also a cunning linguist. P1 Breacher is also saying even moist is frowned upon these days.
I have, there's a lady in my office that does not like that word. And it was funny.
Really?
Somebody brought in a carrot cake yesterday. It was awesome. And and of course I intentionally worked it in the conversation. I said, there's carrot cake in the break room, and I had a piece, and it was really moist. She turned around and gave me a stare, and luckily, it's not an HR issue. We kind of have an HR guy, but the HR guy is kind of a buddy of mine, so it doesn't really matter. And she wasn't really offended, but for whatever reason, some people don't like that word.
They do. And I'm going to just say this. Don't ever go to a barbecue place if you're doing like any sort of like saucy barbecue, because they've got these moist towelettes that you have to be able to use afterwards. And, maybe that's something. Bring in a big tray of ribs one day and be like, we've got some really saucy ribs and there's just a slew of moist towelettes. Moist towelette, anybody? And then you just keep getting to use the moist towelette thing. Anytime she needs a napkin, moist towelette.
That even sounds worse. Moist towelette. What do you think they use that for?
Jeez. What don't they use that for is really the question. Moist
Oh,
towel.
that's great.
Oh God, one of the catch-alls. Hey, the poll question, Chad, on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney, also on our Facebook group page, is asking our audience members if they were surprised the Packers cut super dropper Amari Rodgers. Well, I'm reading this poll. Put up that little graphic because I thought it was really funny. We put this together today, and it really has one interesting stat about why Rodgers was just so bad and why he needed to be cut. 71.4% of the respondents on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney say, when asked if they were surprised by the move, no, he sucked. And 28.6% are saying that he is still young. So yes, they were surprised. You had mentioned that Matt LaFleur sort of, in discussing the release, talked about the fact that maybe Rodgers just needs another fresh start. He just needs a fresh start somewhere else.
He said something along the lines of, he did everything that we asked of him. Maybe he just needs a fresh start. And you and I are kind of talking about it off the air. And you're right. I didn't really think about this. A lot of teams avoid fumblers. And so hopefully he gets another shot. I think he's talented enough that he probably will. It may not be right away, but I think somebody will probably pick him up and hopefully, I wish him well. It's just, who knows? Sometimes it's not really a skill thing. It's kind of like in your head, you know what I mean? And once that starts to happen, and you start to kind of convince yourself that you're a fumbler, it's one thing for somebody else to call you that, but when you start to believe it, then it becomes a real issue.
That's like in Major League Baseball or baseball in general, when pitchers get the yips. And this has happened to a couple of guys in their career. I can't pick off any specific examples, but I know it's happened where something happens to their throwing motion or whatever, and that becomes something that gets into their mind. I would say this, completely off subject of football, but golf. When you look at Tiger Woods, when he ended up apologizing for being what every rich person was, an actual cheater on their wives because they're, worth $800 billion. When he went on TV and apologized like a little cuckold, he lost all of his golf game. He really did. He lost all of his golf game. I mean, seriously, if you're Tiger Woods in that situation, I mean, that's like a strong, I'm sorry, that's a strong non-starter. We're not even talking about this shit. Okay. This woman's getting $500 million. She was an au pair to another golfer. You know what time it is. Don't make me apologize. And you go play golf. And when you look at this, maybe Amari Rodgers, because he's a Rodgers, kept getting hit up by like these really hot, like models that were asking him to take ayahuasca. He got a little out of sorts and he just couldn't really get back to football. That's something.
I would kind of relate it to this because this is another thing that seems to be problematic for professionals or some professionals at shooting free throws. The thing about shooting free throws is everybody is focused on you. You have the ball. You got 30,000 people staring at you. You got guys lined up beside you staring at you. Everybody's, and depending on the time of the game, it can get in your head. And because it doesn't make any sense, you're paying these guys millions of dollars. You can't it's a free throw. How can you not at least hit 70% of these things? And catching a punt or catching a kickoff, similar. You're all by yourself. You're out there it's you. It's you in the football. You have to make that catch. And a lot of times you muff the punt or you fumble, and then it just gets in your head. I think that his skill is there. It's just something's going on in his head. That's all it is.
Well, the speed is for real. The 5 fumbles, though, this year, Chad, including 4 on punt returns, are the most by a non-quarterback in the NFL this season, according to ESPN Stats and Information. And that's one of the reasons. Also, Rodgers fumbling the ball when he did on Sunday was nearly catastrophic. If the Packers would have lost the game, you could have really looked at that one play, and not that one play makes a whole, but you could have looked at that and said, aha. Now, you mentioned bad free throw shooters, had to bring this up. Matty Ice says, this day in sports history, 1962, Wilt the Stilt, scores 73 points in a 127-111 victory over the Knicks, probably only hit 50% of his free throws.
Probably. Yeah. Good timing, Matt. Thank you.
I thought so too. Guys and gals, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks to our friends Kyle Cable, One Trust Real Estate, the Recovery Room, who powers the Trauma Center Studio, Preferred Insurance, the Midwest Mortgage Team, the O'Neill Law Firm, and Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping for letting us do this. And we'll be back with you guys tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. See ya.